Hello and welcome to the drop-in session. My name is Rebecca White. I am from Engineers of Tomorrow, and I am here tonight to help you feel comfortable and confident. I'm here to answer any questions you might have about the upcoming Future City experience. First of all, I want to let you know that you are well supported for the duration of this program. We have an amazing team here. Our number one objective is to make sure that you and your students and your engineer mentors have whatever you need to make this the best possible experience. We have Kim Buffard, who is our support person from Engineers Canada. Myself, as I mentioned, Rebecca White. I am your primary contact person from Engineers of Tomorrow. And on the engineer mentor side of things, we have my esteemed colleague, Sarah Rishu, who is supporting also on behalf of Engineers of Tomorrow. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us with any questions you might have. I also wanted to give you some perspective, a little bit of context into the program. This version of the program launched in February of 2021. It is a national program, so we have participation from across Canada. So you're part of something really big, and I hope you can share that with your students so they get that perspective as well. Last year, we had 122 classes sign up. This year, we're on track already to exceed that. I think when I checked this morning, we were at about 104 classes that have signed up already, everywhere from Manitoba, Ontario, to I think I saw some in New Brunswick. And registration is still open. It's open until January 27th. So if you have others in your educator networks that you think would be interested in joining us, please feel free to share the opportunity with them as well. All right, so the number one question that we get from educators is like, what does this look like in the classroom? Essentially, this is a design challenge for your students. They are imagining, designing, and building a model of a city 100 years in the future. Every year we run this program, there's a different theme that is attached to that design challenge. The theme for this year's design challenge is a waste-free future. So super relevant topic. Everybody, I think, will be really interested in learning more about it. The most important thing for you to know about the program is that it is not a competition. And the reason I tell you that, and the reason it's important for you to be aware of that, is because that allows us and you to adapt the program or the design challenge in pretty much any way you'd like to, because we don't have to level the playing field, right, as you would have to for a competition style of program. Our primary goal with this program was to help you raise awareness about engineering for your students in a really fun, innovative way and support the classroom curriculum. So, as you can imagine, there are many complex systems that make up a city. So you can choose to focus on any aspect of that if it meets the needs of what you have planned or what you have to cover for your curriculum that year, be it the structures and forces or health of the citizens in the community. You really can take this in so many different directions. Because one of our primary goals is to help raise awareness about engineering, one of the best ways to be able to do that is for your students to be able to connect with an engineer. Meeting an engineer in real life is something that not a lot of students get to do. Engineering is a fairly stealth profession. We are working behind the scenes to design and build things that we use, but it's not very often that you get to see or meet an engineer. So this is a chance for us to do that. On top of that, of course, they're there to help support, be a mentor for the students and support you in whatever that looks like for you. So the engineer matched together with you as an educator, really, it does equal a custom design challenge for your students. So how does it work? There's some important dates, and I figured we'd walk through the chronology of it to frame this part of the conversation. Very first is the kickoff event. To kick things off, what we have done is put together a panel of subject matter experts this year because our theme is waste-free future. We have some really interesting folks joining us who have expertise in that field. They will share a little bit of information about themselves and what they do and kind of plant some seeds, some ideas for your students to get started. And then your students will have the opportunity to ask questions. We have a good amount of time set aside for them to do some live Q&As. So come prepared with all the questions you might have about waste-free cities and what that might look like 100 years from now. There will be 2 events happening that day. The first one is for those of you who want to participate in French. And the second one, and it's happening in the morning. I believe it's at 11 o'clock, but I will be sending out more details to confirm that. The second one, I believe, is at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Both of these are Eastern Standard Time I'm talking. So the 1 o'clock session is the English version of the event. Following that, after we've got everybody all excited and curious about designing their future cities, the following week is when we will send the email connecting you with your engineer mentor. So be on the lookout for an email from us that week. It will include the contact information for your engineer. And from there, you'll be able to start meeting them, right? We really encourage you to connect with them prior to them coming in to visit with your students, just so that you can kind of plan ahead a little bit, find out a little bit about who they are and their background. That way you can even prep your students a little bit to get them excited about this special visitor that'll be coming. Between February and sort of the end of April or early May, that's when you are working on, or your students, I guess, are working on their projects, on the design challenge. So again, this program is very adaptable. If you need to scale it down a little bit, remove some of the complexity, for example, if maybe you're working with younger students or you don't have enough time, or maybe you have space limitations in your classroom and you don't have the space to have like 10 different cities being built all at the same time. Just those are some of the things that you can think about in terms of how you want to approach this design challenge. So the way we traditionally see this design challenge executed in the classroom is that the class would be broken into smaller groups, I'd say 3 to 4 students, and then each group is going through the full process. So that imagine, design, and building a physical model of their future city. The model builds range from students bringing in recyclable materials like egg cartons and yogurt containers and painting them and putting them together in creative ways. I have also seen those builds done if you have access to 3D printers. So some of the pieces of the city might be 3D printed. You are also absolutely welcome, or your students, I guess, are welcome to do their builds virtually. So if your board has access to Minecraft or Tinkercad is another good one, you can, or your students can build their cities in those platforms. That's a great space saver if that is an issue or a concern for you. So that is a traditional version of the program or the design challenge. Another way of executing this in the classroom is to, again, break your students up into smaller groups, like 3, 4 again. But then instead of each group doing the full build or go through the full design challenge, instead you're doing it as a class. And each smaller group or each subgroup, or maybe you could call them little committees, each committee is working on one section of the city. So ultimately, they'll all come together and have one city design. So, for example, you could have one group working on transportation. You could have one group working on, I don't know, parks and leisure. You could have one working on education, infrastructure, residential. There's lots of different ways you can kind of slice and dice it. And then ultimately, that all comes together as one city. And then, of course, to simulate the excitement of working towards something like you would have in a competition style of program, we wanted to simulate that. So we have the national showcase event. So that event happens May the 10th if you are participating in English, and it is May 11th if you are participating in French. So at the showcase, there is one restriction that we have in place, and really it's just due to primarily time limitations. So we do only allow one presentation per class at the showcase. So if you go back to the two models I described, if you decide to do the first version of the program, I'll say, where you have I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 different cities in your class, you will have to decide which one of those cities is going to be the one that's presented at the showcase. So you can do that in whatever way you want to do. You can make the decision, or maybe the students can vote on it, or maybe you could involve your engineer mentor to help with that, making that choice. If you choose to do the second version I described, where the entire class is working together to produce one city, then great, you have one city. You'll have to just select a few students to be the ones that do the actual presentation. You will have about 20 minutes, or that's the amount of time we will allocate in total for the presentation, the Q&A kind of time after the presentation. The students are presenting to a panel of engineers. I should have mentioned that. So the panel will have some questions for the students, and then the engineers will go away, do a short deliberation, and then they will come back with a decision of whether this future city design they have just been presented is worthy of receiving an engineering stamp or not. The presentations, we ask that you submit those to us a week prior to the showcase. So if you could submit those to us by May the 3rd. Just the reason for that is that we take screenshots, or we pull some of the images out of the presentations with your permission, of course, and we create a really nice gallery so that you can see the work that's been done with the other cities from other classes across the country. Also, just wanted to flag that we do rely heavily on email communications. So please be sure to make sure that you have our email address is marked as safe. So anyone from engineersoftomorrow.ca, we're your primary source of communication in terms of program information you'll need to be aware of. And then once you get that Meet Your Mentor email the week of February 6th, also just make sure that you have your mentor's email address marked as safe as well. All right, I just wanted to jump into some other frequently asked questions that we get about the program. So are visits done in person or virtual? So this program was initially designed and kicked off in February of 2021. So at that time, we could not be in schools in person. So it was designed primarily as a virtual program. So the mentor visits are done virtually. The kickoff event is a virtual event. The showcase is a virtual event. Now that we do have the ability in most cases to do in-person visits, that is an option. However, we still do have some limitations. So the engineer mentors are volunteers. They're signing up out of the goodness of their heart and wanting to share their passion about engineering with the next generation. So they live where they live. And so if we don't have someone nearby to you, then just based on geography, it would have to be a virtual visit. And in some cases, it's just easier in terms of logistics and, people don't have to commute and that sort of thing. So when we make the matches, we do prioritize proximity for the reason that very reason, but with that option of them visiting in person if it's okay with you and your school and if it's okay with the mentor. What do mentors talk about with students? So we ask the mentors to commit to 3 visits with your class between February and April. Generally speaking, the first visit, we encourage them to make that more of an introductory visit. So we want them to share information about themselves. Who are they? What do they like? Do they have hobbies? Like, we really want the students to be able to connect with them as a human being. And then they can share information of what do they do in their jobs and how did they get to where they are today? What path did they follow? What were some of the roadblocks or challenges that they might have had? And then of course, tie things together in terms of the challenge itself and how they're there to help them. And they'll be really, encouraging, like, yay, I can't wait to see what you all come up with, that sort of. When they come back in probably March, obviously by then your students will have had some time to think about their designs. Maybe they're even starting on their builds. So they're probably going to have some questions for their mentors. You may want to try and collect some of those questions in advance if you can, to send them to your mentor, just so they have some time to do their homework, so to speak, and they can feel prepared when they show up to their second visit with the students. The second visit is also a really great time for them to introduce the students to the engineering design process, which is a tool that all engineers use, and it's especially and particularly appropriate when you're dealing with complex challenges like designing an entire city. So they can talk a little bit about the engineering design process, what it is, how you use it, how they use it, and how they recommend it can be applied to this particular design challenge. And then if they come back again, probably it'll be in the April timeframe. And so at that time, your students should hopefully be kind of wrapping things up now and thinking about their presentation for the national showcase. So they may want to use that opportunity to practice. We want the students to feel comfortable and prepared going into that showcase. We understand it's probably going to feel intimidating for them to present to a panel of engineers. Well, I can assure you they're all very friendly, but putting yourself in their shoes, it could feel a little intimidating. So the April visit is a great time to do a practice run. The mentors can prep them with some questions they might get asked when they're at the showcase. They can give them some feedback, that sort of thing. How do I communicate with my mentor, and what if they don't respond? So as I mentioned, primary source of communication, at least initially, is by email. If you have a different preference, I highly encourage you to let your mentor know. If you prefer like text or calling or whatever it is, just let your mentor know. It's really important for you to have those lines of communication open to have the best possible experience with them. And if for some reason they're not responding to you, please let me know as soon as possible. It may be a case of like a firewall and their emails aren't getting through, or something else just might have gotten kind of lost in translation. I don't know. So just let us know so that we can react accordingly. What if the engineer has trouble connecting with the students? So believe it or not, the engineers are often very nervous to talk to kids. They are used to talking to peers, to their leadership team, their bosses, maybe writing formal reports or doing presentations for clients. And they maybe haven't talked to kids about engineering in this way before. So they are very receptive to your feedback. You know, this is something that a real that you can bring to this experience. Let them know. Maybe you can give them some insights into your particular class this year. What's going on in your school community? You know, is the class working on another project that they might want to know about? Just give them some insights and give them some feedback. Next, what if something changes? So, we expect the unexpected. It happens. Things can change. Just, we ask if you can just let us know as soon as possible. So again, we can react and adjust accordingly. What resources are provided? So you should have received an email from me with links to the student handout, there's a link there to the presentation template, and then there's some other good handouts in there as well. I think there's one of them is like a PDF with links to some waste-free resources. There's a gallery with previous year cities if you're looking for sources of inspiration, and then also a handout on presentation tips. So all the different kind of touch points with this design. I'll just share a little bit about the template, the presentation template itself. It's a PowerPoint presentation, and once you download it and open it up, you'll see it's divided into the different kind of segments of the city. I already mentioned some of them, right? Like residential, industrial, transportation, that sort of thing. It's great to have a look at that now so that if you do want to break your class up into little subcommittees or small groups and have them all working on these different segments so that they come together and develop one entire city, it'll just give you a sense or give you some of the ideas of how you can break them up. But again, this program is very, very adaptable and flexible. If you want to change the way that the template is set up, you are welcome to do that. If you want to add or remove sections, you are welcome to do that. If you get to kind of mid-April and you're worried that your students are not going to finish the project in time to be able to present at the showcase event, I would encourage you to still plan on participating. It's okay if it's not finished. If you remember, our goal is just to help raise awareness about engineering and to give them that experience of connecting with engineering this unique way. So they could still come, they could share what they've finished so far at the showcase, and then the engineer panel will just give them feedback on what they've seen, or maybe provide some insights into other directions that they could go with the project. Okay, so that's it in terms of kind of what I wanted to cover today. So coming up next is the kickoff event on February 1st. As I mentioned, stay tuned for an email from us, which will give you all the information you need to know about how to join that event, the dates, the times, all the good stuff. And as always, we are here to help. If you have any questions, we have a wonderful support team. We want to make sure that you all have the best possible experience going forward. Before I wrap up, I did want to encourage you to share more broadly, I guess, if you can, what's going on in the classroom while you and your students are going through this really fun design challenge. These are some of the tweets that we saw last year. So it's a great way to obviously share what's going on in your class. If you can to tag us, so either at EIR program or at Eng of Tom, we absolutely love getting that window into the classroom and hearing about what's happening, and we can like and retweet as well. So I would encourage you please to do that if that's something that you are doing already with your class. All right, so I'm going to stop talking now and I will open it up for any other questions that you might have. If we have anyone on the call who maybe has already been in the program, maybe you want to share your thoughts or give some suggestions as well. But thank you all again for your time today and welcome to the Future City Experience.